Welcome, beautiful souls, to another episode to Speak the Shine. I'm Zy'Tavien Abrams, and today we're diving into a deep topic that is often uncomfortable, but also necessary to keep quiet. Yeah, you heard me right. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to keep quiet. Not out of weaknesses, but out of strength, out of respect, out of understanding that silence can be more powerful than words. So let's settle in, take a deep breath, and let's explore what it truly means to hold your silence when you speak, when to stay quiet, how silence can be a gift, a shield. Okay, I have a special guest with me today. Her name is Dr. Lewis, and Dr. Lewis, it's a pleasure for you being here today with us and everything.
Thank you for having me.
So, would you mind giving us some background about yourself?
Sure. So, I'm an assistant professor of sociology here. And my teaching background, I've taught a lot of intro sociology and some upper level classes. My research background is more in social psychology. I've done a lot looking at pro social behavior, which is helping behavior, and a little bit of that sort of research that was done through experiments. Also, just on a personal note, based on this topic, I think it's helpful to know that I'm neurodivergent. So, thinking about what we share and what we don't share, for me at least, has a lot to do with managing ADHD.
Gotcha. So, I have some few questions to ask you, and 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 hopefully to our audience that they will take the information that you give and then they can apply it to their lives. Okay. So, question one: how does silence contribute to success?
I think part of it is knowing who you can trust. And sometimes silence is a way of protecting yourself. So, knowing who's in your social network, who's going to have your back and help protect you and inspire you and collaborate, but also having some understanding of who might not be looking out for you. So, an understanding of yourself, but also the people around you.
So how can a person, when you say they can find a trust and everything, what are the signs of a person that can like trust that person in order to know if they can trust them?
Well, that might be a little hard because we know sometimes people are very good at manipulating us and can seem very trustworthy, very supportive on the surface. For me, it's looking for some level of reciprocity. What am I sharing with you? What do you share back with me? Right? Learning how to develop some sort of back and forth relationship between two people. And maybe having some awareness of how that person is around others. Uh, do they share a lot of gossip with you? Are they constantly saying, well, I'm not supposed to tell you this? But, and part of it too is just growing. The more experience we have with other people, the more we get to see those differences emerge. What kinds of traits do trustworthy people have? How they hold secrets, how they value your opinion, but also they put their trust in you. And what comes across as someone who's maybe not, maybe doesn't have bad intentions, but they're not so good at keeping secrets, as well as understanding what manipulation can look like when it's very superficial versus developing more of that deeper relationship with them.
Right. And I appreciate you saying that and everything. That was very good what you just said, how you explain it and everything.
Thanks.
So I have another question to ask is that like how can someone, develop the confidence, to stay quiet about their goals or anything of that kind of matter? How can they do that?
I mean, part of that too, I would go back to experience. The more you do something, the more you know yourself and you know your process. And some of that comes from within. Those different things we would do to build self-esteem. That sometimes means not constantly comparing yourself to others. Some amount of comparison can be good with tracking your progress, but many of us probably get into that social comparison where we think I'm too far behind, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough. So all of those ways of looking for internal measures of success, is this something I'm invested in? Does this make me proud of myself? Does this feel like a good choice for me that matches with my values or my research interests, whatever you might be talking about? And in doing some of that internal work is certainly going to build confidence.
And that internal work you're saying like is in yourself. So what are the external work that a person has to do as well?
How do you mean that? What are you thinking of with external work?
Well, when I'm thinking of external is like, how can they like show it out? Like how can they express it out? Because you say internal means working inside, and external means working on the outside. So how can that person, work externally out of their own comfort zone of how they're doing it?
Okay. I would usually say for me, it's starting with people I'm close to and I can trust, who are also going to be honest. So if you're talking about maybe opening up your ideas or your
Right.
projects to an audience, for me at least, it's who do I already trust and know to give me that sense of comfort, but who's also going to offer honest feedback. Because even if I'm really close with someone, if I know whatever I say or do, they're going to say, perfect, yeah, that's great. I don't necessarily need that if I'm looking for constructive feedback. I want to know what's actually working, but I also need to know here's where you can build up something. Here's where you can strengthen an argument, strengthen your research project. So first looking for honest, constructive feedback. Also someone who's not just going to tear you down, right?
Right.
And say, this is terrible. You should never be doing this. And then kind of expanding out. Because you want to get to that point where you're so confident in your work of any sort that you can present it in front of an audience. If they don't know that background, you're going to give them enough information, and you're prepared to handle whatever kind of feedback that you receive and know how to respond to it in a humble sort of way, which also sometimes just means saying, well, I'm not sure yet.
Right.
I need to figure that out.
I gotcha. Okay, and I appreciate the advice you're giving to our audience. So, Dr. Lewis, what are the dangers of broadcasting your plans before they're fully developed?
So for this, I think first about more of a research and a work context. Sometimes going back to that notion of who's trustworthy and who's not, there can be a risk of someone maybe taking your ideas or taking your research project idea. Now, collaboration is important, but that involves all parties knowingly working together and sharing. I have had a couple of past situations where I've shared ideas with other folks, and suddenly, somehow, it became that person's project that they
Right.
worked on, and that was certainly a lesson that I learned. So that's kind of where I go first, is that notion of intellectual property, and kind of sometimes how it's a little tricky with whose idea it is.
Okay, so like when you say the tricky part, what's the tricky part with that? Can you give us a quickie part about like what's tricky about it?
Well, especially how that idea forms. And is it written down somewhere? Is it recorded where it says Danielle Lewis came up with this idea on such and such date, and it's hers and hers alone?
Right.
Versus how we do a lot of communication in research where it's verbal, it can feel comfortable, it can feel collaborative, but some people might knowingly or unknowingly take that work over, and suddenly it's their work on this day
Right.
at this time.
So let me ask you this question. Can you share a personal story where silence helped you to achieve your goals or anything like that?
Yes. So I think for me, and I don't mind sharing this, it's something I've been talking about more openly, would be my choice to start going to therapy, actually. So I know you might be expecting a research answer.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
But so for therapy, I started out thinking about that, just what was going on with myself and wanting to make a personal choice first. This is something I need to do for myself. And I looked into it and started, and then I told people later. I didn't want to be in a position where I did it because people told me I should, or that I didn't do it because people were discouraging me. So in that case, I stayed silent for a little bit to make sure it was just a decision that I was fully making myself.
Right. So when you said you kept it inside, did something internal want you to say it out loud towards people in a way of
For
sharing
sure.
your goal?
For sure. I mean, I certainly wanted support, right? I wanted people around me to say, that's amazing that you're, trying to take better care of your mental health.
Right.
But I still didn't want to maybe unintentionally listen too much to other people versus myself.
Gotcha. And I appreciate you saying about that. So my last question is that, are there situations where sharing your plans is beneficial? Is it beneficial to do that?
Absolutely. And I would go back to making sure you're first sharing with trustworthy people. But I think, for one thing, for me too, it's some accountability. Dealing with ADHD, sometimes I start things and don't finish.
Right.
Or sometimes I want to start and don't start them at all.
Right.
So for me, sharing with people gives me an accountability circle. Right? They can check in with me. How's this going? How far have you gotten? And when it's trustworthy people, I know it's for the right reasons, and they can kind of keep me on track a little bit. Or if I'm struggling, they already know what I'm doing, and we can have that conversation. What do I need from this sort of social support network?
Right. And the network be huge or small?
Usually it's better to have it somewhat small, right? So when we look at things like our strong ties in social networks, those are going to be the people that we're closest to, that we have the deepest connections to. So for me, at least, that would be the small, kind of inner circle of
Right,
people
the inner
around
circle.
me.
So like a friend, like a friend group or something like that. Gotcha. Okay, so Dr. Lewis, I really appreciate you having your time with us. You share us some amazing information to our audience. I really appreciate you coming here on the show today on Speak to Shine, and thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much for asking me. I really appreciate it.
No, we appreciate you. All right, so that's it for Speak to Shine today. I'm Zy'Tavien Abrams. Remember that you can actually hear us on YouTube, Newberry_College, and also on WNRR-LP FM 95.5 FM. Thank you for joining us today. See y'all guys next time.